And that's a crucial, often overlooked truth. Ash juniper, commonly called cedar, sponge mats once played a central role in regulating water, preventing erosion, and supporting biodiversity across the Texas Hill Country, particularly on steep, shallow soil slopes where few other plants could survive, let alone thrive. These mats weren't just for
Rank the ecological role of ash juniper in the Old Hill Country. 1. Sponge mats. Downpours. Slow down sheet flow across the surface, allowing more water to infiltrate the shallow soils and underlying fractures. Prevents splash erosion by softening the blow of raindrops on exposed soil. Act as organic check dams, catching and redistributing sediment and moisture on sloped terrain. Before the age of bulldozers and brush clearing, these mats functioned like natural rain gardens, buffering the landscape from flash flooding and helping water percolate down into the aquifer below. 2. Root systems that hold the hill country together. Ash juniper isn't just a water sponge, it's a geological anchor. It thrives on rocky limestone ridges where oaks and grasses struggle. Its fine laterals spanning surface soil, while deeper roots penetrate bedrock fractures, stabilizing the land. These roots combine with sponge mats, create natural terraces holding back erosion on steep inclines. On hillsides with thin soils and high runoff potential, juniper is one of the few native species capable of creating long-term stability. Without these root systems, rainfall becomes a battering ram, ripping through soil, creating gullies and carrying sediment downstream. 3. Juniper supports microclimates and biodiversity. Though often dismissed as invasive, ash juniper in its mature, old-growth form supports an array of ecological functions. The shade beneath dense canopies creates cooler, moister microclimates, which slow evaporation and foster diverse biological communities. Juniper litter and duff provide a base for fungi, insects, and soil-building microorganisms. Understory plants often take root in the protective microhabitat. In intact systems, ash juniper coexists with oaks, native grasses, and wildlife, contributing to a mosaic of habitats vital to Texas's ecological heritage. In fact, certain species, like the endangered golden-cheeked warbler, depend exclusively on ash juniper bark for nesting material. What changed? Overgrazing plus fire suppression. Cedar overgrowth. Starting in the 19th century, human land use patterns shifted dramatically. Buffalo herds were wiped out and replaced by large populations of domestic cattle and sheep, leading to overgrazing, especially on open prairies. Indigenous fire regimes, which kept grasslands and oak savannas open, were halted. Without regular fire, ash juniper expanded aggressively. Result: dense thickets of young, moisture-hungry juniper grew in areas where they had not historically dominated. This led to decreased ground cover from grasses and forbs, reduced biodiversity in former savannas and grasslands, altered water cycles, with more runoff and less infiltration. Importantly, this ecological imbalance was not caused by ash juniper itself, but by human suppression of the systems that once held it in check. Misguided management. More flooding, not less. The reaction to the cedar expansion was often indiscriminate clearing, using bulldozers, chains, or fire to strip the land bare. But this had unintended consequences. Sponge mats were destroyed, exposing vulnerable rock and thin soil. Bare slopes shed water rapidly, leading to flash flooding. Erosion increased, choking streams with sediment. Groundwater recharge declined as water ran off instead of soaking in. Flooding in the hill country today is often blamed on rainfall extremes, but the deeper issue is how the land has been stripped of its natural water-absorbing capacity. Restorative insight. The pre-clearing hill country was never one uniform type of landscape. It was a vibrant, shifting mosaic of oak juniper woodlands, savannas, tallgrass prairies, and sponge-lined ravines, each with its ecological function. Ash juniper was never the enemy. In fact, on steep slopes and rocky outcrops, it is a keystone species, protecting land and water.